Welcome to Model Monday. It has been a couple of weeks since I recorded, but by request, we're recording this class today. I kind of stopped recording a few weeks ago because I want to change the format of my recordings. I think I'm going to try recording my prep for the class. So do like a prep recording on Sunday. It'll be shorter, so I can just kind of like, bang through a 15-minute video instead of like an hour-long video. Because in the recorded version, you can push pause and then, do a thing. And maybe it's not as entertaining or useful when I like walk away from the camera and go, help people who are actually here in person. So I might try changing that because I'm getting near 100 videos.
Oh.
And it's like, maybe I should like put some effort into this. All right. So production value. I do work for a production company after all. So today, tool paths by popular demand. In order to make tool paths, we first need to have a part in which our tool can path around, which is not an adjective, but whatever. So we're going to first draw a kind of a silly looking part here. So in order to draw our part, let's go ahead and start by creating a sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Sketch. I'm going to draw on the surface in between my green and my red axis, because that'll save me some steps later in CAM. But we'll probably go over it anyway, the steps that I'm saving and doing a good setup. And I'm going to go ahead and say, once I've created my sketch, now I'm in my sketch editing environment here. Have you opened Fusion? Have you drawn anything in Fusion before? Nope. Okay, cool. First time. All right. So all of our sketch tools are now at the top. When we create a sketch, now we're what's called as editing a sketch. So we've got all of our sketch tools at the top, and then we've got our sketch palette over here. Those are your clues that you're editing a sketch here. We're in 2D mode. Kind of. I mean, we can still move around. Up in the top right-hand corner is our navigation cube. And we can still move that around, and we can look at this environment three-dimensionally. So we're not like fully two-dimensional, but we've got all of our two-dimensional drawing tools at the top here. And I'm going to go ahead and make a 2-point rectangle. Actually, I lied. I'm going to make a center rectangle. So I'll click on Create, and then Rectangle, and then Center Rectangle. And I'll click and I'll place the center of my rectangle right in the middle of my drawing world. You guys know, as a general rule, I like to have some part of my sketch connected to my origin here. We're going to constrain things in dimension, but it's also nice to constrain things in location. And I'm going to make this like 6 by 6. I think that's a fine shape to have there. It doesn't really matter how big it is. Actually, it kind of does, because we're going to make CAM paths out of this. So it's be nice if we can have some uniformity to our shapes here.
How do you switch from metric to inches?
Yes. So this is the thing that I always forget when we have new people. Over in the top right-hand corner in our browser, underneath where it says Document Settings, you can spin open a little triangle next to Document Settings, and you'll see a Units pop up there. And if you hover over Units, there's a little icon that'll appear right next to it. And if you hover over that, it says Change Active Units.
Oh, I see. It's already. Oh, where is it? I know it's up here.
Everything seems like it's.
Yeah, you gotta hover over where it says units, inches. You gotta hover over the words units, inches before that icon pops up.
Is Tony here, Viva?
And then you can change the active units to freedom units. Only the freest countries in the world use freedom units. And just for the record, those are the United States, Myanmar, and Liberia, the free countries. Myanmar and Liberia probably beating us in math and science. Because I'm right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's, you know. Are you joining us for Fusion?
I was wondering, yeah, if I could get it loaded up fast
Yeah.
enough so I could sneak in.
Yeah. So far, we've drawn a 6-inch by 6-inch rectangle. So.
Handle that.
Hey, Carl, question, is there a difference between the rectangle you chose and just the rectangle option that's usually at the top?
Yeah, so the way that you make the rectangle. So the rectangle option that's probably at the top most of the time is the 2-point rectangle. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter which one you make, but a 2-point rectangle is made by specifying the 2 opposing corners. So I click and I place the first corner, and then I move my mouse out and I can specify the second corner. The one that I made is a center diameter rectangle, or a center rectangle. And a center rectangle is just made by specifying the middle of the rectangle and then its 2 sides. So it's just a difference in the procedure of making the rectangular shape. And I mostly made a rectangular shape because a center rectangle, because I'm gonna eventually draw on one of these other planes, my X or my Y-axis plane.
Is there a reason that yours says constraints and mine says modify? Because I think we're both in, I'm in design, and it looks like you are too.
Are you currently editing a sketch?
Mm.
You are not. Yeah. So if you create a sketch.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So in create, in your create menu, and then create sketch.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I'm drawing on my top surface, so you can click on the
way
word
it
top.
works, so I think you were
And then you're going to go straight down there. So now it'll be easy for you to just click on that little rectangle there. There we go. And now you've got all your sketch tools at the top. You've got your sketch palette
Well, thanks.
here. Yeah, for sure. And then in the create menu, you'll find rectangle and then center rectangle.
Got it.
Center rectangle, that sounds like that's what we
Yeah.
Rectangle, and then center rectangle, and that's the center point meeting there.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then you can actually just type in right away.
And now you can let go of your mouse. Oh, you clicked. That's okay. Don't panic. If you accidentally click and before you type in your dimensions, the idea is to type in your dimensions before you click. But if you don't have dimensions on your rectangle, here I'm going to change the size here. In my create menu, I can add dimensions after the fact here. So I can click on create and then come down to sketch dimension. And then I can click on the side and then that I want to dimension, and then I can place this measurement just by clicking here. And now I can say, hey, that's 6 inches, and I can add a dimension to this just the same. All right, and then I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. So I can click on the Finish Sketch in my sketch palette here, a little button here, or I can click on the little Finish Sketch icon in my Tools menu up at the top, the little green checkbox. Either one of those will work. All right, let's extrude out this shape. So I'm going to use my navigation cube in the top right-hand corner, and I'm just going to click and drag on it so I can look at this sketch in a little bit more three-dimensional way here. And now from my Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and grab the Extrude tool, and I'm going to extrude this shape up. 1 inch is probably good.
What are we making?
We're going to make just a three-dimensional shape up here for some tool paths. So, yeah, we've been doing CAM stuff
Nice.
in the advanced class for the last couple weeks, so people have been enjoying that. So,
What's that mean?
computer-aided manufacturing.
No, I'm sorry, when does that mean?
So the advanced class is right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
He goes off on weeks, like
Got it.
basic, advanced, advanced.
So basics at Linux and then.
No, they're both here.
Oh.
But it's just every other week I go back and forth. It's on the
Gotcha.
calendar.
Okay, cool.
If you look at the Makerspace calendar, it says which one is beginner and which one is advanced
That makes sense.
/ intermediate.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna create. We've got a box. Box. All right. So now we're gonna create another sketch. So we'll click on Create, and then Create Sketch here. I'm going to create this sketch on one of the planes that bisects my box in half. So this plane will work. This plane would also work. Either one of those would be just fine as long as it cuts our box in half.
Is there an easy way to move the center of origin?
I don't think so, but that's a fine question. This is our origin over here.
Because I know that you said best practice to start it in the middle.
Yeah.
If you want to like move something to it.
I don't. Well, all right. Moving something to it, we might be able to accomplish.
You like snap to it by like, getting a center point.
Maybe with the Align tool.
Ah.
So, like potentially, we could use the Align tool, and we could say, "Hey, let me hide the sketch." Here, let's move it first. Let's move it out of the way. So if we move it, so it's in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And now if I use the Align tool, the way the Align tool works is you hit the From object first.
Okay.
And center points are really common for Align things, and I can kind of hover over the various like faces and corners here. But for our purposes, like hit that bottom point, and then if I hit that, that point right there.
What's the constraint that is the for when your one point touches the other point?
Coincident.
Is that it's the same kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I guess this is applying some sort of. Well, it's not really a constraint that it's adding because I could still
You can
move
still
this
move
after
it,
the
yeah.
fact.
Okay.
But yeah,
Cool.
it's really useful if you've got like separate components that you're bringing in together and you need to align them with each other.
Yeah.
All right, good question. So from my Create menu, I'm clicking on Create Sketch, and I'm going to choose one of the faces that bisects my box here. And I am going to draw a line straight up from the bottom of my origin. I'm going to go up 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to grab my spline tool from
So
my
the first one was line?
Yeah, I drew a line straight up from my origin, 3/4 of an inch.
And then spline?
Yeah, and I'm going to grab my fit point spline option here. And I'm going to draw a wave. And as long as my wave goes off the side of my sketch, actually I think we want it to go way off the side of my sketch. And we want it to come like way off the side of my. So if I highlight the line that I drew, yours doesn't need to look like this. It just needs to have some curve. It doesn't really matter what kind of curve it is. It could be more curves, it could be less. But I want to be able to generate a 3D toolpath, so we'll need some curved surface to do that.
Is that line associated with one of the two sketches?
Yeah, so this line, so we drew one sketch that was our box, and then the second sketch is this line and the curve.
Okay. If my sketch has a red block on it, am I in the wrong spot?
Not necessarily. A red lock on your sketch indicates that it is a sketch that is fully constrained. So my first sketch that I made was a fully constrained sketch. So good question. I'm going to click on Finish Sketch,
6x6.
and I'll go back and edit that sketch. Fully constrained sketch is a sketch that's constrained in dimension and in location. So all of my lines here are black, which tells me it's fully constrained. If you have blue lines in your sketch, that's a sketch that's not fully constrained. But so this sketch is constrained in dimension. It can't be larger than 6 inches. And it's constrained in position because it's locked into that center point, because I used that center rectangle to make it. On my other sketch here, the other sketch is not fully constrained yet. In fact, this other sketch won't be fully constrained, strictly because it's made with I have a spline in there. You can constrain a spline, but it's a real pain in the ass. And if you can make splines tangent to things, and you can define distances between points on a spline, and like give it distances in X and Y. Sure. It's possible to fully constrain a spline. I would argue it's pointless to fully constrain a spline, because the point of a spline is to have a curved morphing shape. So, as much as I like making fully constrained sketches, this ain't gonna be one.
Sure.
All right, and to finish this off, I'm just gonna close off my shape here. So I'm gonna make another, I guess, line that's about that long. And there we go.
How'd you go to just from your curved line to your straight line there, your flat straight line?
So a trick that I like to do is, if I know I want to draw a line, well, here, we can do it two ways. So one way is, if I just kind of hover my mouse over my origin point, and then I slowly move my mouse off to the right, there's a little blue line that's popping up here, and it's saying, oh, you're trying to make these things like horizontal vertical from each other. And I can click and place that, and it's going to be strictly right across the way. Now the other way is, if it's in the wrong spot here, I can add a rule, I can add a constraint that will say, hey, make this point directly across from this point here. And that is, from my constraints menu, the horizontal vertical constraint. So constraints are rules that tell your sketch how to be your sketch. And if I choose this horizontal vertical constraint, I can choose that point, and then that point, and now they're snapped into position there. And now all I have to do is grab my line tool to close off my shape. So I've got a fully enclosed funky curve there. Steve's table in the back here that's got a water drop thing on it. This is how he makes the water drop shapes. So he's got a piece of wood, and then he draws a curve, and then he just revolves that curve.
So this is CNC?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense versus sanding.
Yeah. Steve built the 4x8 CNC machine at the other space.
Oh.
Yeah. Steve was here today. He was here earlier. I don't know
I
if
think
you.
he's usually still here for a while once he comes.
Yeah.
His place is not this room, but the one next to it, right near the door. That.
Oh, I can see that. Okay.
Mhm.
You have a computer in the corner?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. And there's often a guy with darker hair, but Steve is a blonde guy.
Steve is a yacht
work the place
owner?
Together.
Oh.
Huh?
I mean, it depends on who he's talking to. Whether it's a yacht or a boat, or like when the tax man calls, he's got a dinghy. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to click Finish Sketch one more time here.
Does it matter how far this extends off of the box?
Well, only kind of. Thankfully, because this sketch isn't constrained, we can expand it after the fact if we need to. We're going to revolve it around this center axis here. So it just needs to be longer than whatever our corner point is.
I will make it longer.
And here, maybe I'll make mine shorter, and then if other people have the issue, we can show them how to fix that problem.
So you did a line, you did a B-spline curve, and then another line, and then how did you close it into a shape?
Just by drawing a line across the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, I already revolved it. Probably jumping ahead too much.
That's all right, cool. And I revolved it, and I would do interior. Oh, that works too.
It's
That works
upside down.
too.
Did I do this wrong?
Well, I was thinking we would do it instead of do your revolve again.
Just did this right here.
Oh, and I drew mine down. You drew yours
Oh,
up.
mine's upside. Yep.
It doesn't really matter. But I was thinking instead of cut, we would do intersect.
Oh.
And then we would have just the intersection, and it would be right side up.
Cool. That's neat.
For some reason, we couldn't get him to choose it kept choosing one of the surfaces that it thought I wanted him to create a sketch on. It wasn't allowing him to choose the. Yeah. There we go. Got that, and then you can switch. There should be a little check mark. That's if you ever want to end your line. And then if you want to.
I lost my favorite style.
How you doing? Good.
And then
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
choose from the top of that. And then you just make your sketch.
Yeah, that's all it is, right?
No,
Yeah, exactly. It's like a pendulum. Yeah.
Henry Schultz.
Do you mind if we keep going? You don't mind if I keep going up here? All right, cool. So, because I want to get to actually making some tool paths here. So from our create menu, I'm going to go ahead and grab our revolve tool. I'm going to click on my little shape here that I've got to revolve around. And then I'm going to specify as the axis I'm going to revolve around is going to be my little center axis there. And instead of making this a cut, right now the default operation is defaulting to cut. I'm going to change this.
I'm so sorry, can you go back to the revolve part one more time?
Yeah. So we'll click on the profile that we're going to revolve.
Okay.
And then the axis that I'm going to revolve around is going to be that line at the middle there.
Okay.
And then instead of cut, which is probably defaulting to, I'm going to choose intersect.
Oh, did you bring up the revolve menu? The right click?
From the create menu,
Oh, got it.
and then down to revolve. So you'll have to say finish sketch. So you can click on the finish sketch icon there, or you can click on the finish sketch button there, and then you can go create and then revolve.
Beautiful.
There we go.
Let me say put them in the profile and then click on the axis here.
Yeah, we missed the profile though. So, click the little X button there. There you go. There we go. Now we got it. Now you click on the select button where it says axis. You click on select.
Okay.
And then you can, there you go. And then instead of operation cut, it's going to be operation intersect.
Can you explain intersect versus cutting? I never really.
Yeah, so it's the intersection is going to make it so what I'm revolving, only the things that overlap is what it's keeping.
Okay.
Versus cutting, it would be, I'd be left with kind of the opposite of that.
Okay.
So what I'd be left with after a cut is this shape here, where it's curved on the bottom and flat on the top.
So the negative of a cut is the
Correct.
intersect. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Sweet.
Cool. So now we've got a curved shape here. I'm going to turn off my sketches. So now that we've got our curved shape, now we can come over to our design menu and we can leave the comfort of our design workspace and head over to our manufacture workspace. You're excited about that over there. You're doing a little dance. Manufacture workspace. You're like, yes, I like it. All right, cool. So, does anybody remember from 2 weeks ago what the first step is? We have to...
Like set the machine, right? So
Exactly. We have to make a setup. So, in the first step here we're going to do here is our setup menu. You know, in general, in Fusion, all these menus are kind of set up like this, I think, where you kind of work from left to right. So, like, we're going to start over here in our setup menu. You're probably going to do your 2D toolpaths next. That's probably not the case in this scenario, but we'll get there when we go to it. So, setup, and then I'm going to go, hey, we're going to make a new setup.
My drop down just has automatic in process stock creation. Yes, probably
You've got two versions of Fusion over here. What's going on there? Here, you're in utilities, so you can come over here to milling.
Oh.
There we go.
Not really. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so setup, new setup is what we're going to do here. A setup is information about the tool that you're going to use to cut it out and the stock that you're going to be cutting this out with. Optionally, you can give Fusion some information about the machine that you're going to use to cut this out. Some machines are have 3D files that are built into Fusion. That might be a little bit, we might get there eventually, but first I want to make some toolpaths. So we can always add a machine later. Maybe there are some benefits there to actually having the machine you're going to use. But for now, let's start with our stock. So our stock, the material that we're going to cut this out of is our big yellow amorphous cube that surrounds our material right now. We've also got a stock tab over here.
Oh shoot! Something
So from our stock tab, we can give it information about our particular piece of material.
Oh, okay.
The default in Fusion is to make our stock a relative size box, and that is relative to the thing that we're cutting. I encourage people to change that to a fixed size box and then measure the piece of material that you're going to be cutting this out of. So if you've got a piece of wood that is 7.5 inches by 12 inches and it's an inch thick, or you went to the lumber yard and Catamaran Hardwoods sold you 4/4 wood, you can just type in 4/4. Or maybe you got the 6/4 wood. Maybe you're real fancy. You could just type in 6/4 right there. 6/4 is 1.5 inches. But I'm just gonna type in 1 because I think we made our thing 1 inch, right? Yeah. You can additionally tell it where to position your model in our stock. So right now, it's positioning it the center of our X and the center of our Y and the center of our Z position. That may or may not be exactly where you want to put it. So just to show you that you can say, hey, I want to offset it from my X negative. And it's going to automatically say offset it in order for it to be at its at the center here. So if I say 0, there we go. So now it's going to set it all the way to one side. I'm going to leave it at center just because that's easy. You might have okay results if you line up one of your edges with an edge of your stock, but you'll have to be real careful on the machine to make sure your stock is perfectly parallel to the machine. So there'll be some extra, yeah.
What is X negative in this case?
X negative is, well, it depends on like physically or digitally.
For, like when you're saying offset by X negative.
Oh
where is
yeah,
that offset from?
X negative is the opposite side of wherever the arrow is pointed away from.
Oh, okay.
So the arrows point towards the positive direction.
Yeah.
So X negative would be over here, and X positive would be over here.
Oh.
Yeah, and you can have it offset from either X negative or from X positive.
Okay.
Yeah. But center, I think, will be just fine. It's useful to look at this and go, hey, how do I want to clamp this to the machine? How do I want to mount this to the machine? So, to look at your extra material and you go, all right, if I got 1.5 inches extra, that means I got 3/4 of an inch on each side, which isn't a whole lot of space for a nice clamp, but maybe it's enough room for a screw. Keep in mind that if you're using a 1/4 of an inch tool to cut this out, now you don't have 3/4 of an inch extra space. You only have a 1/2 inch extra space because your tool's got to fit in there, right? So, but we've got 12 inches on either side here, so I can put my clamps down here, and that'll be just fine. So there's some thought that gets put into our stock and measuring it and having it right. The last thing that I want to do here is set up our origin. So right now our origin for our piece of material here is right in the center. You can totally mark the center of a piece of wood. I worked at a wood shop where this is all of our origins were in the center of our pieces, and we just drew an X from corner to corner and got it pretty close. Like we've got 3/4 of an inch here, 3/4 of an inch here. So if you eyeball the middle of your X that you've drawn on your wood, it's going to be close enough. It's not going to be within 50 thousandths, but it's going to be definitely within 1/8. So, and we've got, like I said, 3/4 of an inch on each side. So that's probably fine for a lot of things. But if you want to be real precise about your origin, I would set your origin over on one of the corners. And I'd pick a top corner. So the way we set our origin is if we click on our origin here, and when we click on our origin, all these little white dots you'll see around the outside of our piece of stock here. I always set my origin the same way. If I do something the same time or the same way every time, I'm not gonna be confused about what past me did when I actually go to cut this out. And I set that up so that my origin is on the top of my stock, and so both arrows point away from my stock. So in my brain hole, if I see a negative number on the CNC machine when I'm jogging my tool around, and I'm like, where over my part am I? If I see a negative number on my digital readout, I'm removing material from my part. If I see a positive number, then I'm not removing material from my part. So that's how my brain thinks about it. You don't have to use that system, but I encourage you to have some sort of system for yourself.
So you hit origin, and then you used stock box point, and then you selected that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if I click on the origin there, then it'll let me choose any of these box points as my 0, 0, 0. And it's real easy to line up an edge, to find an edge on a CNC machine and line that up. Stick a little sheet of paper in there and get it moving nicely. All right.
And
Yeah.
how did you set that to your origin? You said.
Yeah, there you go. So I would say, I think your stock looks real big. So your stock here, the Z.
My Z wire flips like a little weird.
Oh, here. Yeah. Yeah. So tell you what, let's do this. That will cause us an issue later.
Okay.
So in your setup here, instead of model orientation, click on model orientation and say Z-axis and X-plane, or either one of those first. There you go. And now, if you pick on that surface that's between your blue and your green, or blue and your red axis,
I see, yep.
or spin around so you're looking at the underside of your mouth. There you go, that one. Yeah. There we go. Now your Z pointed up.
Okay, cool.
Now you can change that to 1 or 2 or whatever you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is everybody's Z-axis pointed up? The blue axis is pointed up? Cool? Alright, good. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on Oakley Dokley. Alright, so for a piece of material like there, for an object like this, we probably want to do our contour cutting last. So we want to cut out our object after we do our carving on the top of it here. This carving operation that we're going to do on the top, I think we should probably do in 2 different operations. Why? Because then I can show you 2 different operations. So we could do a roughing pass. And a roughing pass I like to use when I'm doing like 3D stuff here is this adaptive clearing. An adaptive roughing strategy, there's a nice paragraph here. You can read that if you want to. But essentially the idea behind an adaptive clearing is when you're cutting a piece of material away, you don't want to just run into the material and cut and then leave it, and then run into the material and then cut and leave it. You want to kind of slowly be cutting gradually all the time as much as possible. You want to kind of keep even constant pressure or slow gradual pressure on your tool. And this adaptive clearing keeps that in mind as to the material that it's removing and does it with slow gradual pressure. So let's choose our tool first. So from our tool menu here, from our tool drop down, I'm gonna find my milling tools inch. And now I'm gonna scroll down until I find my quarter inch ball and mill. You don't have to do this with the ball end mill, but we're definitely going to do our finishing pass with the ball end mill. And it'll save us a tool change if we just use our ball end mill for the roughing pass as well. And it's kind of height or size based, so it kind of starts at small on the top. Cool. We kind of talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago. If I click select, and now I go back to that tool, it's kind of in my documents now. So this tool here, can I right click on it? I can right click on it and I can edit the tool. And if I go to cutter, you will have information that your tool will inevitably not be exactly this tool. Your tool is probably pretty close to this tool in most of the ways that count, but if you want to be real precise about it, and like maybe you want to be real precise about it, you can change the measurements of this tool so it matches exactly the tool that you're holding in your hand. So like the real important parts is like, hey, how deep can I cut? If you can only cut 1/4 of an inch on your tool, that's much less than this tool, so you're going to want to give Fusion that information. Because Fusion will tell you if you're about to make a cut that your tool can't do. It'll give you a little error there. Or if your tool is only, 3/4 inch deep, like you don't have any of this part of your tool, you may want to give that information to Fusion. So, it might be worthwhile in some cases to enter in the dimensions of your tool here. Cool? Cool. All right, so for now, that tool is just going to be fine for us. And I'm going to say select. A couple weeks ago, I gave my disclosure about speeds and feeds. Speeds and feeds are like this: speed at which your cutter is moving around and the rate at which your cutter is going. I specifically do not talk about this kind of stuff in class because I know this is like probably one of the frustrating things when we do CNC stuff, because I don't know what you're cutting. I don't know what you're cutting it with. I don't know what machine you're cutting it on. I have a lot of variables that I don't know. And when you go and use one of the machines and you're like, Carl told me to do this speed, and then you break everything, then it's my fault. So like I don't want that responsibility. There are lots of feed and speed calculators on the internet. I encourage you to look at them. Bill Squared is a feed and speed genius. Tom Klein, feed and speed genius. There are people who you can go to here in the makerspace. I will talk to you about feeds and speeds outside of class and show you websites. But I try not to talk about this in class. You're going to have to do some research on your own based on your own material and your own machine. All right, disclosure done. So now we're just going to leave it at the defaults. That'll be good enough for our purposes. But we can go over to our geometry tab, which is the next tab over in our little adaptive clearing window here. So our geometry tab, our machining boundary is what we want to set here. So the boundary right now is set to none, and I'm going to change it to selection, and then I'm going to make a selection. So the selection I'm going to choose, I believe, is going to be this top line here. and you don't have to click OK, but I'm going to click OK because I want to make sure that I picked the right thing. And then I think it's thinking real hard right now.
You did the top face contours one?
Yeah, I clicked on the top lines there, and it's making a tool path, 43.5%. It's going real slow for whatever reason. Yeah, that looks like that was the correct option, but don't click OK because we want to make a change. Right now, the way that it's doing this is it's going to try to cut the full depth all at once, and I probably don't want to do that, depending on my material. Oh, and hey, that was not the right option. So, actually, I think in geometry, instead of selection, do we do bounding box?
How are you getting geometry to open up a little more here? Geometry selections?
So there's like a tab.
I'm in the geometry tab.
Yeah. And then machining boundary is what I'm kind of messing around with. Going, which one of these machining boundaries do I want to?
It's not even giving me that little window. But it is I'm in the geometry section. Right here,
Try just. Does yours look like mine? I wonder if I have a different update. Maybe you've got a
No,
machining boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But mine did not do what yours did when I clicked this line. Oh, so, yeah. When you did the previous one, the selection, and I selected this top line like you did, and it gave me this green.
Yeah, and then when you
closed
click
chain.
OK.
Oh, I didn't try
is
that.
when- Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Is when it actually tries to make the tool paths.
Got it. Okay.
And you can hover over the thing. At least when I hovered over it.
Oh,
gave me
it
a
looks like it's
percentage.
loading.
Yeah. But I think bounding box is what we want here. Yeah, and Jacob, I'm not sure why yours looks different in your geometry tab there.
Yeah. Maybe I just need an update.
Well, maybe I do.
Huh. Well, because I feel like mine has less options than yours.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if the little icons that were underneath that little window after you made that little selection, if those little icons were referring to the different types of selections that you could make.
Yeah, because I just fixed that.
Yeah, so those icons there.
Yeah, do a back on it.
Face contour.
Yep.
Mine too, although I thought red was bad.
Oh, are you are in a 2D adaptive clearing?
Wow. Okay.
I might be in 3D adaptive clearing.
Oh, you know what? Is that what's going on
Yeah.
here? Adaptive clearing.
Yeah, there you go. That's looking.
That might be the issue.
That looks like what we want to see there.
Okay.
Is that bounding box?
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is the selection.
There you go.
Is that
Yeah.
also?
Well, I can go back
It
to
is. I think still building, so it's
Okay.
not quite. There
Oh,
we
it
go.
will be, okay, great.
There we go. Tool paths.
So mine is selection, but I can go back and do the bounding box. If that's the better way to do it.
Yeah, you know what? If it's as long as it's making tool paths for you and they're in the right spots.
And you said you chose bounding box?
I chose bounding box.
Cool.
But yeah, that looks great.
Oh, cool.
So, but in reality, we probably want to do this in more than one pass here. So if we go back and edit our tool here, almost, that's not true. Most of the time, when I'm making a cut, especially if it's a roughing cut, I'm going to do it in more than one pass. So in our passes tab here, if we scroll down, there are two things that we want to check out and take a look at. Actually, we probably want to look at 3 things here. One that we didn't look at last week. So we want to have stock to leave, because this is a roughing operation. We want to leave a little bit of material to remove on our finishing pass. Depending on what material this is, 0.2, 0.02 might be enough. If my tool tips go away, sometimes I often increase that to 0.05. 0.05 is not a lot of material, but I just know that there's going to be some stuff there for me to take away, especially if this is wood. Having more stock to leave, because the grain has thickness and it's going to break away in different ways in a roughing pass, so you might want to have to lean towards having a little bit more stock to leave. If this is a brick of gold, you could probably leave it at 0.02, and you know.
Where's the amount you're leaving?
In the passes tab. Yeah.
And then
Yeah, and then the stock to leave.
got it. Okay, cool.
And then, why here? Order by depths? Not order by depths. Why don't I have a multiple depths option? Maybe I don't have a multiple depths in a 2D or in a 3D toolpath. Maybe that's not a thing, so it's just fine. Oh, here we go. Maximum roughing step down. That's what I was looking for. So this is the maximum amount that it is going to step down before it makes another cut at that layer. 1/2 inch is a pretty big step down. And I am not that aggressive with my tool path generation. I'm not saying the machines can't take it. I'm just saying I have more patience than that. So I will often use 1/2 of the width of my tool as my step down amount. For a roughing operation, you know, I don't care how many stair steps I have going on here.
But it would take 4 times as long to do that.
It would, yes. Yeah, 4 times as long as if I were doing it than 1/2 inch, yeah. Yeah, now if I say, you know what, and the last thing I'll mention here, I'll point out is the direction of your, the direction of your cut refers to your tool is spinning clockwise, and you can either be moving against the material, or you could be moving with the material. Moving against the material is a conventional cut. You'll remove material faster in a conventional cut, but you'll have less good surface finish. So a lot of times in a roughing operation, I will do a conventional cut, and then in my finishing operation, I'll do a climb cut. So then I'm moving with the material. You kind of rub up against the material a little bit more often if you're moving with your material. You get a better surface finish on a climb cut.
It's too bad they don't say that, climb versus conventional.
Yeah, you know what, and let me say somewhere in here, well, one way or both ways, but yeah, so a little better cut from a climb cut. But this is just a rough and pass, so conventional is just fine. And now I can say okay, and we will generate that tool path. And there we go. And make us a nice complicated 3D tool path. Now, while that's doing its thing, we can pick out our finishing tool path. And our finishing tool path is just going to be a parallel pass. So parallel is good. Operation if you've got a curved surface and you want to do a nice finishing pass on it. So if we come over here to 3D and then parallel, the same tool we're using is just fine because we picked that 1/4 inch ball end mill. The geometry that we're using, I think can just remain on silhouette there. And then we don't have to leave any stock to leave here in our passes. We don't have to have a stock to leave. We don't have to have multiple depths because we did like a roughing pass, so we've already got not very much stock left over. We just have to set our step over, which is going to be, where is our step over? Step over, there it is. So our step over right now is set to 0.0141339, which must be for some sort of reason. But 0.01 is a probably, and this would be material dependent. Some materials will accept a bigger or a smaller step down than others. You get diminishing returns from, you know, small step downs, step overs, excuse me. If this is a piece of wood, you're going to be sanding this wood anyway, probably after a tool path, but like 0.01 is pretty small. You can zoom in and see all the lines that it made there. And now for our final trick here, let's simulate this. So I'm going to click on my setup. It's important to note that you want to click on your setup over in your setups tab. And now I can come over here to actions and I can say simulate. And if I push play down at the bottom, that's what it's going to do right there. In our statistics tab, so you can see that this kind of like adaptive clearing method, it kind of slowly approaches and then makes a bigger cut, slowly approaches, slowly approaches, slowly approaches, and it's kind of like making tool engagement the entire time, so it's not stopping and running into it and stopping and running into it. This is going to take 2 hours and 8 minutes at this feed rate and speed rate to cut out this little 6-inch thing. It's a lot. 3D toolpaths just take a long time.
So for my
Yeah.
simulation, I just am not seeing I just see the final thing, not the overall stop.
So click cancel.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and you got your setup selected.
Mhm.
Do it one more time.
Action, simulate.
Maybe if you click that stop box.
You ever
There
end
you
up,
go.
uh,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have I ever what?
you ever end up simulating a banana peel? Did that ever end up working?
Oh, yeah, you know, it fell.
Yeah.
But you know, like, meh,
It was alright?
it was alright.
Alright.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, there we go. You know, this is a fairly accurate time-ish. You know, you might want to bet on extra 15 or 20 minutes. But, and crucially down at the bottom, I see a lot of green going on down here. This is where I currently am in my timeline. If in the bottom you see a bunch of red, those are indicators that like something has gone wrong, like your Fusion is saying, hey, your tool is running into your stock, or your cutter's not long enough. It'll give you a little red line that something has gone awry there. So if it's green down here, you don't have any problems. If there's red lines down here, you should take a look at those and make sure that you set your tool up correctly, or you haven't made any errors in that respect. I can speed this up. I don't have to look at this real time here. I can click and drag on this thing and really make this thing fly. So you can see it's doing those multiple depths, and then there's my finishing pass, where it's going to go over one line at a time, stepping over just that 0.01 inches, and give me a nice finish on the top of my bar of gold that I'm machining into a water droplet artwork. It's fun to machine bars of gold. You guys should try it. If you're just doing steel, you're not really living.
Are those in the hack rack? The bars of gold?
They're somewhere in there, yeah. In the basement of Linux, go down to the basement of Linux, all the bars of gold are down there. Yeah. So the last thing here is with our setup selected here, I can say actions, and then I can say post-process. And by saying post-process, that's the file I'm saving out here. So this is the file that I will actually open up on one of the CNC machines. The post-processor depends on what machine you're using. So this post-processor is just kind of like a different flavor of G-code. The 5x10 here is a UC CNC machine. The Bridgeport and the 4x8 machine at the other space, those are Mach 3 mill, where it says it twice. We also have a Linux CNC machine at the other space. We have a Linux CNC machine here too.
How did you bring that pull down?
Where it says post-process?
Yeah. I said choose from library.
You might have to go and say choose from library,
Okay.
and then at that point it'll, yeah, and then there, oh yeah, local, there you go, yeah, there you go, yeah. Go back to choose from library. Click on cloud. Or Fusion library. There we go, there they all are. So now there's a whole bunch of them there, and you can scroll down and find like Mach 3 mill or Tormach. Both of the Tormachs at the other space. Tormach has their own post processor, so if you don't see yours listed here, you could say choose from library. And then if you go to the Fusion library, then all of them are listed right here.
The 5x10 here, Harvey said it's the UCCNC.
Yeah, correct, UCCNC. And then the other quark with the 5x10 here is the safe retracts have to be set to clearance height. Some machines have them set at G28. G28 on that machine means something different, and it won't retract. I don't even think it'll run your code. It'll just give you an error right off the bat.
Okay.
So clearance height.
So then, assuming we had the right, the milling information done correctly with the speed and everything that you've mentioned, if we have this file, we can export it and then you could load it up and it would run.
You can load it up and push go. Yeah. When you load it up on the machine, it will show you all of your tool paths in 3D. So on the Mach 3 or UC CNC program, you can zoom in and you can look at all your tool paths. Cool. All the blue lines will be there. Yeah.
Hey Carl, real quick, where's the revolve option again? If it just.
Yeah, revolve is in the create menu.
It is in the create menu.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, you know what? Oh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is it for today. Maybe I'll mention the thing that I forgot to mention is obviously the file name. You'll want to name that. And then the comments here, these comments will appear right at the top of your G-code. When you open it up on whatever CNC machine you're going to run it at, the very first line, you see your code there. Most of it will be gibberish numbers, but your comment will be right at the top. And I like to put in information about the tool that I was using, so past me can tell future me how to do his job. and I don't have to go back and open up the Fusion file and try to remember what tool I need to have in
The
there
cutting
first.
head you're talking about?
Yeah, so if I was like, oh, it's a 1/4 inch ball, then I'd write my 1/4 inch ball and mill. And that way I know, like, all right, good job, Carl. I'm supposed to use a 1/4 inch ball and mill. So, cool?
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I think about like trying to do the project that we have not done in Model Monday that keeps coming up in my head is guitar. We've not electric guitar, like solid body electric guitar.
What is this?
I mean, it'd be a project that we could do in Fusion, and probably take more than one class. But so if that's something that you're interested in seeing, let me know.
I'm down for that.
Otherwise, we'll see you next week.